back for another episode of Meteorology Lab, and this is a quick look at some of the equipment, and this kind of shows you what I kind of have to contend with every episode. So sometimes if I'm kind of quiet or seem kind of distracted, I'm dealing with that. Well, we've got a full moon out, almost a full moon, I think, and I think we're up almost due for a penumbral lunar eclipse, and I believe that is tomorrow. Or, let's see, no, that's going to be on Friday. Okay, so that's the latest I have, and that moon looks awfully full. So I would expect it to be happening about now, but I guess that's what the calendar says, February 10th, UTC time. Some of the equipment that I use too is the live cam, and I'm trying to experiment with that and get it working also. And you can see we got this chroma key, and I'll probably be using a little bit more of this when we do radar stuff during severe weather. So let's start heading into the charts and see who we've got connected. A few early people. We got Sue M. and Andrew and Ron from Southern California is back. Lexi from Texas, Fun with Tech, Brian Harp, Kevin checking in, Tom J, Tree Nelson's here, Jeff Day, Jason Boggs. And Alexi points out Friday with an eclipse and a comet. I haven't heard about the comet. I'm going to have to do some research on that, and I think I'll kind of summarize this when we get into tomorrow's webcast. Yeah, we do use a little bit of AWIPS here, and this is AWIPS at the Weather Service in Lubbock. And I like showing that tool because it's what the Weather Service uses, and here's a 500 millibar chart. But what we'll start out with is looking at the radar. You can see we've got a little bit of activity in Alabama tonight. And as the AWIPS fills in all the radar data, you can see we're mostly looking at Western Virginia, the Appalachians, southward into Alabama. Also, we've got things pretty busy out in the Pacific Northwest with a new Pacific system coming inland. And I've got some water vapor imagery for that. The tail end is where we're looking at generally for most of the most severe stuff. So we're focusing down here, and maybe even down here for a possibility of severe weather, but I haven't seen much in the way of warnings come out lately. In fact, you can see it looks fairly quiet. I believe we just have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect for northern Alabama there, and maybe one severe thunderstorm watch or warning. Mostly what we're looking at around the country is winter weather on the northeast coast, and you can see pretty busy out on the west coast. Here's the temperatures we had today. We saw very warm conditions down in Texas, 88 there in the San Antonio area, but we've got a front moving southward and cooling things down. We can look at the 500 millibar chart to kind of summarize the pattern. And you can see we're locked into this blocking pattern. This has been kind of the chart that we've seen over the past 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Northwesterly flow in Canada and a fairly zonal flow across the southern U.S. And you can see we've got ridging across the west coast. So all that precipitation out there is contending with that. But this is kind of representing the very strong warm air advection taking place ahead of the Pacific system. Likewise, we have troughing over the central and Midwest area, and this corresponds to cold air that is pushing southward out of Canada. Now, another chart we can look at is the 850 millibar chart. I haven't shown you all too much of that, but this is up at 850 millibars, which is about 5,000 feet. It varies according to the density of the air. And what we see on here is the height lines. This is kind of like pressure. And we have temperature lines as dashed contours here. And what we see is a very strong temperature contrast between Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska. See, we go from 12 Celsius to minus 15 up here. So obviously we've got some sort of frontal boundary right here in this area. So if we're having trouble locating the cold front on surface charts, we can go to 850 and kind of get a top-down look at what's happening. So we can just kind of trace that all the way up into upstate New York, and looks like it goes through the Scranton and Harrisburg area and down to around Charleston, West Virginia. Okay, so where is that front at the surface? We can take a look at the NAM chart. This is thickness and pressure. And we can see a very strong temperature discontinuity across the central U.S. right in this area. Core of the polar air up in northern Manitoba. So this is the front right here. Then we kind of lose it here because the front is kind of shallow in this part of Texas. But we can look at the surface charts to kind of figure that out. And it looks like another front up in the Pacific Northwest. But you can see the main system is off the coast. I don't know if that's showing up. Let me check my monitor. Yeah, that's just off the edge. So we have the cold front still offshore and a pretty good feed of air out ahead of that. So I can show that to you on the water vapor imagery. I'll switch over to that real quick. Again, this is water vapor, so basically what you're seeing here, this is where significant amounts of water vapor have attenuated radiation coming from the surface. So we're not actually directly seeing moisture, but this is kind of a signature of moisture being present there at that particular wavelength. And we see basically Pineapple Express picking up lots of tropical moisture from this area out of the Pacific and bringing that northward. So Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, they are in the gun, under the gun, and are probably going to see more of this rain moving up that way. We can also kind of pick out where the jet is. You see this very dry area here. That can be a signature of the jet stream location. Most likely position just like that, and possibly another one further up north like that. Okay, so those are just kind of a few things to look for when you do analysis. All right, let's see what we're going to look at next here. Yeah, we should take a look at the surface chart. I'll switch over to that real quick. And we can see the front has made some headway through Texas, just passing through Houston and San Antonio, located about like that right there. And that traces on up northeast towards those thunderstorms there in Alabama. And some pretty good cold air up to the north in Kansas and Nebraska, teens and 20s up in that area. All right, let's check out what's happening up in the northeast. We know that there's a pretty good winter storm going on in that region. We can see there's a lot of baroclinicity in that area. Let me get this centered here. Okay, so there you go. You can see the Outer Banks of North Carolina, 60s, very high dew points there, 58 with fog, contrasting very sharply with these teens and zeros inland. And that baroclinic zone is right through West Virginia and Tennessee, and we can probably trace that all the way up to Long Island. It's like 64 right off the coast there. So at this point, we look for the low. Looks like that's located right here in western Virginia. And if we wanted to, we could add some contours, like the 1008 contour would go something like this. And we can use this contour analysis to kind of figure out exactly where the low pressure is and keep tabs on what it's doing. So this is a baroclinic system. It's a frontal low, and that's going to be moving on up along the warm front, heading for Philadelphia and New York City tonight. And we'll check out the models to see what it does with that low. Okay. What should we look at next? I guess I'll take a quick look at the Fort Worth sounding. We know they're back behind the cold front, so we're going to expect to see a frontal inversion. And maybe a very weak one right here. You can definitely see the north winds. Then I'll bring up Oklahoma City, which will be a little further to the north. And there we can see a stronger frontal inversion. Very dry. Don't see the moisture line going way over here. We see a rather dry column here. Okay, let me look at the chat and kind of catch up with things. Yep, need more light if we use the chroma key. That's true. I've got some LEDs up here. I'm kind of working on getting those set up right. Last time I threw a bunch of light on the chroma key, it really washed out the color. Kevin McKinney says the storm line in Tennessee is heading for him. What are some of the software packages and sites that we use? We use kind of a wide variety, and sometimes I point this out from time to time on the webcast. This sounding here is the University of Wyoming. We sometimes use SPC's experimental site here. And then on the software side of things, I, of course, use Digital Atmosphere, which is a program that I wrote. And then I also use this AWIPS program, which I've been showing you. And we can use this AWIPS to kind of look at the dynamics of what's happening. So we'll check that out, what's happening with the dynamics tonight. Okay, so this is going to be the current time right here. And what we see here, we've got a jet, looks like, up in British Columbia in this region. That's because I'm looking at this channeled area of cyclonic vorticity right there. That's an indicator of a jet right in that area. And it's probably linked up with this other one in Quebec. So the polar front jet looks to be pretty far north. Maybe another segment right through this area here. And there's the ridging that we talked about and troughing in the central U.S. Don't see too many advection lobes like classic shortwaves. There's one here off the coast. That's a shortwave right there. This is the positive vorticity area. So that's kind of one indicator you can use to find vertical motion. So there's destabilization and cooling of the column in that area right there. That tends to remove the cap. And we've got this other shortwave moving southward. So that's probably going to come into phase with this Alabama stuff a little bit later tonight. May have a bit of an effect on that. So let's see what's going to happen tonight going into tomorrow's webcast. Okay. In fact, let me run the whole thing through so we don't get this flickering thing. That way it goes into the cache. Okay, there we go. Much better. Tomorrow night's webcast, it's going to look like this. Mostly cold air advection out over the eastern U.S., and as a consequence, we have troughing out in that area, ridging starting to build into the plains, so a bit of a warm-up there, and looks like a lot of Pacific energy coming on shore here. Going into Friday night, more Pacific energy works on shore, main trough coming into the San Francisco and Eureka area. Things look pretty quiet out in the eastern U.S. Then for Saturday, that trough carves out itself into a low over Southern California. So it looks pretty showery there where Ron is. Probably going to get some good rain out in the Southern California area and out into the deserts, Las Vegas, and into Arizona over the weekend. So that'll give us something to look at in a couple days. So at this point, I think we are almost ready to head into the forecast. I'm going to pull up GR Level 2, which is another program. This looks at Level 2 data from NEXRAD. So it's very fine. It's very high resolution. And we can see nothing too severe here. It looks pretty quiet all up and down the line. These are just strong thunderstorms. Might get an occasional severe thunderstorm warning out of one of them. And you can see we don't have very strong reflectivity gradients on these cells. Like the core of the storm is not packed to the south side like this. The core is more towards the center. Then we can look at higher tilts, and you can see it's pretty much stacked vertically. There's the core right there. I'll put a dot on that. Go back down to the surface. You can see the core at the upper levels is pretty much sitting right over the low-level cores. So we're not seeing a whole lot of tilting, or we're not seeing a whole lot of overhang either. Then another signature we can look at is storm relative velocity. Make sure there's no strong levels on this. And I probably don't have the values set right here, but we're just showing a 25 outbound, about 7 inbound, so that's kind of weak. Again, here, very weak velocity all up and down the line. Maybe a little bit of strong shear right in this area here. Let me see if I can bring that out just a little bit. I'm going to set a movement vector. I'm going to set it at 220 at 30. And yeah, just not seeing much severe here. Just your average garden variety thunderstorm moving through Alabama there. Okay, let's get the forecast set up. We'll head to the GFS panels. And here's tonight's weather. So you can see that high pressure area in the northern plains bringing cold air south through the Great Lakes area in the Midwest. So there's our cold front, pretty much banked up against the Rocky Mountains right there, barely into the Denver area. And we can see a little bit of low pressure in Western Virginia, where we analyzed that on that surface chart earlier. And we'll move forward into tomorrow. We can see out there in the northeast U.S. that system starts intensifying a bit over the Delmarva area. Drops to about 996 millibars by 3 in the morning. So we get some heavy snow, looks like, in northern Maryland and towards the Carlisle and Philadelphia area. If you're going to look at this in closer detail, it's probably better to go to the NAM or the high-resolution rapid refresh. The global model is not really ideal for small-scale detail like that. But that moves off fairly quickly. Looks like kind of windy and a lot of blowing snow there in Connecticut and Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Then by tomorrow night, that'll be mostly off the coast and just very strong cold air advection coming into the northeast. High pressure over Kentucky, and you can see the warm air advection already setting up across Texas and the northern plains. So this is when we start looking out to the west and we see Pacific moisture coming into Northern California. For Friday night, A lot of that cold air spreading into, or that moisture spreading into California and Nevada. The plains mostly under the influence of this lee side troughing. Looks like some downslope there, so probably warming up pretty good on the plains. A little bit of a Alberta Clipper coming through Minnesota and the Lake Superior area. For Saturday, you can see this high pressure starting to build in from the Pacific Northwest, bringing cold air into the Intermountain region and the Great Basin area. So we're going to be looking at the front starting to move through Arizona, northern Baja California, and there's the cold core low right there over the Los Angeles area. So this is going to be Saturday afternoon here. Warm front over the Midwest right there. Looks to be fairly dry. The Gulf is open, so we'll have to watch for thunderstorms as the system approaches. For Sunday night, leading edge of that high pressure area moves very quickly to the southeast. So it looks like we get a line of weak showers just behind that front, and you see some pretty good cyclogenesis right in this area. But the main baroclinic zone is right in this area here. So this is actually where the frontal system is. Main baroclinic low right here around the Big Bend area of Texas, and this is more of a barotropic low, more of an included low back there in Arizona. So you might be watching this area closely, but this is the one here you need to kind of be careful about. So we'll move this forward to Monday night. Looks like some high pressure building in across West Texas there, all the way into Kentucky. But a bit of isentropic lift over Texas, so it looks like very strong, humid southeasterly flow flowing up over this cold dome. Then we go into Wednesday, still kind of a rainy pattern for Texas. Looks like a bit of snow there in the higher elevations. For Wednesday, it starts moving off into the Gulf. Cold front comes in behind. Thursday looks pretty quiet, and this is the ChaserCon weekend. Just kind of a lee side trough there over the Rockies. Bit of a backdoor front coming into the Midwest here. So you see that easterly flow right there. And that's because of this high pressure area way up at the top of the chart here. So that's a pretty good unusual backdoor front right there. You see that kind of moves southwest. Bulk of the cold air comes down into Texas and Arkansas for Saturday the 18th. And it looks to be pretty quiet. And then we get to the 24th, the end of the chart. So that's about all I got there. Okay, let me look at the chat here. Calio Delphi, that's a new name. Haven't seen them. Daniel Park preparing for the 40 Celsius weekend. Wow. Satellite page, Tom's asking about that. For the satellite page, I'm using this Marshall Space Flight Center page here. I don't know if that shows on the monitor right there. Yeah. weather.msfc.nasa.gov. They've got some pretty good satellite products there. Yep, warming in the plains. Sarah says we have snow up there. Ron hoping for rain Friday and Saturday in Southern California. Yeah, I'm kind of looking for that. And Tom J, I think he's in Las Cruces, says my roof isn't done. Yeah, no rain. Oh well. All right, so anyway, I hope you had a good time with this, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. And let me press the play button on my music there. So many buttons here. Anyway, thanks for joining, and hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.